know what really makes us mad? Is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers? Welcome to punklottopod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I am your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And this is the show where we select a year at random and then choose one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk-adjacent album from that year to discuss.
Yes, random.
I mean, I didn't say random. Well, kind of.
You said at random. You said we picked the year at random, and that's not even true anymore either.
It's algorithmically selected based on the oldest one we've not done.
Yeah, based on a pattern that formed randomly, I guess.
Yeah, the pattern formed random, and then we just kind of are like, okay, well, we haven't done this year in a year. Let's talk about something from then.
And of course, we're avoiding the 80s because Justin is in 86 on the Dance of Days.
Yeah, and I'll let you pick something from the 80s at some point, but I don't want to do the picking from the 80s. And you did the 70s last time. Well, no, actually, last week's episode, you weren't here, so we had to fill in.
You did a 2010s record.
yeah. So there's that for the next 6 months. And then I picked a year at random that was very close to the 2010s.
Yeah, right.
But before we get to that, if you want to hear some of our bonus audio, head over to our Patreon for $1. You get access to all of the bonus audio we've recorded. Let's see. Last week we did a 2016 chart dive, and we might do a 2009 chart dive this week. So look out for that. I don't think we have anything else would be like a news of the world or something like that, but an 09 chart dive would probably be fine. And probably what we'll do. But you're hearing this after that went up, so future Justin, edit this out. I'm not going to edit it out. And then we also have a $10 tier where you get to choose the album, and we actually had someone take us up on that, so that'll be coming out soon. They picked a record from, I don't want to give it away yet, from 1995, but I'm looking forward to doing that episode. We'll have to figure out when we can do that, schedule fit that in our schedules. And, we're coming up on the end of the year, so let's see. Oh, this is going up the day before Thanksgiving. So we need to kind of start thinking about what holiday episode we're going to do and then kind of wrapping our heads around the best of 2022. I have a Patreon idea that's a little crazy, and we'll see if it comes to fruition. And also, if you head over to the Patreon, you get access to all of our Moon Pies for Misfits videos where I taste a sample a special beverage. Usually it's some limited offer thing that you can't get year-round, but for the newest one I just posted was the Sprite Zero Sugar Winter Spiced Cranberry. I think I've had like a cranberry Sprite before, but I don't remember this Winter Spiced one being available as a zero sugar, so I did a video on that. I don't know what makes it winter spiced. And all of that is on our Patreons, patreon.com/punklottopod. And then we have all our social medias, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, @punklottopod. Email address, punklottopod@gmail.com. And our voicemail, 202-688-PUNK. Start leaving voicemails and telling us some of your favorite albums from 2022 so that we can have those ready for the new year. All right. Is that everything?
I think so.
All right. So for this episode, I looked back, and we just did a 2010s album last week. The week before that was a 70s record. And then I've done my Dance of Days. Those are in the 80s. And then we did a 90s record with Seam. So I was like, okay, it's time for the 2000s. They haven't had a shot. So I went to my little database that I keep backs of every episode just so I can sort them by year. And so 2009 was the year we hadn't done in the longest, and that was January. We did that,
which was Touche Amore.
Yep, Touche Amore with the discography guys, which that was a really fun episode. And then right before that, we did it in July of 2019. we had good friend Corey come on and talk about Victor Fix the Sun and No Effects. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
So those are really the only other 2009 albums we've done. We've not done much from this year. So what was going on in 2009?
Well, the records that I remember from 2009, Axe to Fall by Converge, very relevant to what we're talking about. I do believe we talked about this record a good bit when we talked about the Touche Amore record. I do remember the Touche Amore record coming out that year as well. On a non-hardcore note, I do recall that last Yeah Yeah Yeahs record coming out. It's Blitz, the dance pop record, which was I enjoyed at the time, but didn't really stick with. Let's see, Post Nothing by Japan Droids. I remember that one very well. Got super into that record.
Is that that's the first one? Okay, yeah. Celebration Rock was 2012.
Took too long for that to come out. That was yeah, they didn't need to wait that long for it to not sound any different.
Yeah, it sounds the same.
I do very distinctly remember Can't Maintain by Andrew Jackson Jihad, AJJ, as they are now known, coming out. Arizona Juvenile Justice.
Actress January Jones. They hated their name, and they wanted to change it pretty early on too, but I think there was this like pressure to be like, well, don't change it, then you gotta start all over. And it was like, early enough in their career that probably would have mattered, like probably like after like the second album. I don't know when they were trying to change it, but they wanted to change it way before they did. And everybody was calling them AJJ anyway. But yeah, that's my favorite album by them, hands down. No questions. Let's see. There's a Paramore record. I think this is one of the Paramore records I did not cover on the show. Yeah, this is the one between Riot and the self-titled, which, fun note, they changed the album artwork for the self-titled because one of the members of the band had a lawsuit against them. One of the members is not in the band anymore. So they changed it and took him off the album cover. What is it with the dudes in Paramore being like, I'm gonna sue you? It's like, well, nobody's here for you, so go ahead.
You gotta know you're the most expendable member of Paramore.
Right.
What else we got? Empire, I Was the Loneliest State put out What It Takes to Move Forward.
Pretty big record.
Pretty big deal. Definitely saw them at a house in Asheville around shortly after this record, probably. That is the last on the music industry record, isn't it?
Scrambles? Maybe.
Yeah,
I'm not 100% sure.
No, Vacation came out after. Sorry.
Everyone who what was Manchester Orchestra's deal? They put out their record Mean Everything to Nothing. People were like all over that record, but I don't think anybody cared about anything else they ever did before or after, like the same way they cared about that album. In fact, it looks like they take a real dip in quality. Yeah,
I've never gotten the deal with Manchester Orchestra. I really can't tell you what they sound like, actually. I see that they're tagged post-hardcore and emo in the subgenre tags, and I definitely would not have thought that they had any hardcore influence.
I was thinking like the Hold Steady, but not as like Springsteen-y, more Coldplay than Springsteen. Don't know. I guess we'll discover what 09 was really like when we do our deep dive, but I think I was still really into heavy stuff and lots of metal and hardcore stuff. So Alexis on Fire released Old Crow's Young Cardinals. That's a good one. Was that the last one?
Yeah, that was the last Alexis on Fire record. I bought that one on CD.
Yeah.
I was still buying CDs very occasionally. It didn't stick, but I was definitely kind of like on the tail end of my like infatuation with Alexis on Fire.
And moving into your infatuation with City and Color.
Very briefly.
Well, it was definitely Dallas Taylor's infatuation with City and Color that was taking over at this point.
Dallas Green.
Dallas, Texas, whatever his name is.
It's literally why the band is called City and Color.
Who's Dallas Taylor?
Isn't that like Under Oath?
It might be Dallas Taylor. Hell yeah. He's the former vocalist and founder of the American metalcore band Under Oath and the lead singer for Maylene and the Sons of Disaster.
Mylene.
He's got an eye patch on one in multiple pictures. What? Weird. Yeah, Dallas was the singer when they were a black metal band. That's right. Those records were bad too.
Piss Jeans put out King of Jeans.
Yeah.
That's the one with... Oh, it's not the one.
No, you're thinking Hope for Man.
Hope for Man is the one with I've Still Got You Ice Cream.
Yeah. AFI's Crash Love, which was the follow-up to December Underground.
A record that I could not have missed more if I tried. Harder if I tried. I don't know how to phrase that. A record that I was never aware of.
That one?
Yeah.
I was aware of it because I had to download it for my ex when it came out, and
They didn't just buy it?
No, they were in college.
Literally their favorite band.
Yeah.
You would have thought that they would just buy it, but
maybe eventually. Who knows? I wouldn't have known. We didn't make it much longer. Ooh.
Wingnut Dishwashers Union put out Burn the Earth, Leave It Behind.
That is not where I thought you were going.
Where were you going?
I was going to the next page, apparently. The much anticipated follow-up, Gallows, Great Britain, and boy did no one care. Why does that happen so much? These bands that are like, oh hell yeah, they're huge, and they like become like, this is what punk is now, and like become the only thing, and they bring punk back, you know, like one of those, and then like nobody gives a shit about them after.
The very important European import bands. They put out 2 more records after this one.
Yeah, but I think what's his name left? Frank Carter. He left in 2011, and then they got the guy from Alexis on Fire to sing. I don't know why. He sounds nothing like Frank, but whatever. Matt and Kim's Grand. So if you like that clinky clanky piano pop, I think that song was probably used in a commercial.
It is really interesting to me how easily I went from metalcore kid to having no idea what any metalcore bands were doing. In like a 2 year span, like a year span even. Like I feel like I was pretty aware of things in 2008 that were coming from those scenes, and then like in 2009 I'm like, what came out? Born of Osiris had a record. Horse the Band had a record. I really did not think that they were still together by 2009.
Yeah. So okay, let's do the usual. What did I almost pick? So I almost picked Summer Fences by Castavet. I was like, that would be a really fun record to talk about. And then I was like, wait, did we do it at 100 and 100? Probably. And I could see a guest choosing this album if we ever gave them 09. So who knows? Maybe I should have done it just for that reason. But no, I think the record we got was a good one. But yeah, I love that album. It was the first full length. Technically a full length. As long as a full length. It's probably like 7 songs. But and then I also considered It Hates You by He Is Legend, which was the third He Is Legend album. And I thought, hey, let's get some of that algorithmic synergy going on, because they have a new record that came out literally last week. And I was like, maybe we'll get some accidental clicks. And then I was like, I mean, I like that record quite a bit, but I don't think it would be the one I would do an episode on.
It's an interesting record.
There's a lot of good stuff on there.
It's really good, actually. I've listened to it recently, and it holds up really, really well.
They're a band they went on hiatus for a couple years, but when they came back, I was like, yeah, this is cool. They're back, but I don't know what they're going to do. And then they wound up like having staying power and like releasing like 4 albums since they came back from hiatus. And they're all pretty good. They're not as memorable. Like that's their biggest weakness. They still sound like them.
Nothing after It Hates You that I've listened to has stuck with me as a record that I've come back to, and I'm pretty sure I have Heavy Fruit and Few on vinyl.
Weird. Yeah, Heavy Fruit, Few, White Bat, yeah, and then the new one's called Endless Hallway.
White Bat. People really loved White Bat. Like people who are like Ride or Die He Is Legend fans have like White Bat tattoos, and I'm like, damn, that recent?
Wow, I do think it earned them a different audience. I think they have a different audience now because now they're on like what label are they on now? It's like a big metal label now. Starts with an S. It is Spine Farm.
I feel like they've landed in the like, what do you call that? It's like a melodic stoner adjacent metal category. It's very Baroness and Torch kind of fan. Like,
oh, maybe
the kind of person who has kept going with Baroness and Torch.
I think they turned into a European metal festival band. I think that's they're like alternative metal, I think is how you would describe the newest record. They have like a tone that like the like djenty deathcore bands have on their guitars, but they don't play djenty deathcore. They just have that real big, ugly, like chicka 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 chicka, guitar tone, which they had way back then. But yeah, and minimal band member change too, which is interesting for this type of long-term band. But yeah, there was that. I thought about Lucero's 1372 Overton Park. I want to do an episode on Lucero, but maybe not that one. It's not my favorite. It's good. It's really, really good, actually. But it also kind of signaled their shift into going for it mode. And I think it worked. It earned them some attention they didn't have before. I think that was a major label release, too. Yeah, it was on Universal. They did their one and dipped out.
All right, we got the
we've secured the bag.
All right, we locked in the Sons of Anarchy fan base. And
yeah.
Got a Jack Daniels commercial. And we could do about. Was it a Jack Daniels commercial? The Rumble one?
Yeah, it's a Jack Daniels commercial. Which it's not their music, it's just him talking.
And they've got the Sailor Jerry sponsorships.
Yeah.
Too.
All sewn up with bad tattoos. And then lastly, Shinobu Strange Spring Air. I was really considering that one. Ultimately, the reason why I probably didn't pick it is I was like, is anybody going to listen to that episode? I don't know what Shinobu's legacy is, other than he inspired lots of other bands. Pretty sure Jeff Rosenstock stole his whole thing from Shinobu.
Well, including Mike Huguenot.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the one I actually did pick. We got 2009, and I selected Ox by Coalesce. Coalesce were a metalcore band from Kansas City, Missouri. They originally formed as the band Breach in 1994 before changing their name because of the Swedish Breach. They released their first full-length album in 1997, Give Them Rope. And then in 1998, Nathan Ellis joined the band on bass, replacing previous bass player Stacy Hilt. The band would then release their second album, Functioning on Impatience, that same year. In 1999, they released their EP of Led Zeppelin covers called There's Nothing New Under the Sun. And then their third full-length album, 012 Revolution, in Just Listening, the same year. They played their final show, quote-unquote, in 2005, and then released a final, quote-unquote, 7-inch in 2007 called Salt and Passage, and then they went on tour in Europe. And then drummer James Dewey's of the Get Up Kids and Reggie and the Full Effect left the band, and Nathan Richardson of the Casket Lottery joined. And so we get to this record, released June 9th, 2009 on Relapse Records. This is the fourth and final album by Coalesce. Those are not in quotes. This actually is the final record. And it was their first record in 10 years. The personnel is Sean Ingram on vocals, Jess Steiniger on guitar, Nathan Ellis on bass, and Nathan Jr. Richardson on drums. And the album was produced by Ed Rose, who has produced every single Coalesce release since their 1995 EP 002. Okay, where do we start with this? Let's. It's hard to talk about a band that you have a pretty extensive knowledge and experience with lots of their records. So do you remember how we found Coalesce? Because that I couldn't remember.
Not specifically. I don't remember the first time I heard them. They kind of came with the discovery of Converge and Botch and really everything that influenced Norma Jean. They kind of just came part and parcel with the whole concept of mathcore as a genre to me. So it was just, once I became aware that was a genre, I was like, okay, so these are the big ones: Converge, Botch, Coalesce, Dillinger Escape Plan. Okay, now I will find out what they all sound like. So I don't recall exactly. I think the most likely first exposure to Coalesce was going to Barnes and Noble to the little listening pod things.
Yeah. And
just looking them up and listening to the 30-second clips that it would play. That's probably the first time I heard Coalesce. I was like, this sounds cool.
That actually probably is the first place I heard them. Yeah, you're right. It is probably Norma Jean is the reason. We probably would have been like, oh, they like that band? Okay. Or maybe it was even similar artists too. And then you go finally listen to them and you go, that's pretty cool. But there was I guess there was just no lightning bolt eureka moment where you're just like, oh, hell yeah, this band is awesome. I can't remember the first album of theirs I listened to all the way through. I can't remember. I know the first one I bought 012 on CD when they remastered it and re-released it. And so that could have been the thing that converted me fully. Because then I remember kind of really just diving deep on them and getting everything and downloading everything I possibly could get my hands on. And then they kind of became the band that you're have you heard their Led Zeppelin covers that you play for someone else? You know this song? And then you play Sean Ingram doing the lyrics to the Immigrant Song.
Yeah, Coalesce is an interesting band to think about the legacy, because I don't think that they're really well appreciated, even still.
Yeah, they're regarded as the big four of mathcore, which is Botch, Converge, them, and the fourth one tends to be interchangeable. But I think when that was originally the thing, Dillinger Escape Plan was probably the one that people were saying at the time, until they turned it to just Faith No More clones. But Calculating Infinity, specifically era. Because who else is brought up in that? People say the Red Chord, but the Red Chord were not one of the original big four. They came in later.
And they're more of a grind band. I mean, and you get into maybe the proto metalcore, proto mathcore, the bands that were influential to most of the mathcore bands, and you get into Dead Guy and Rorschach.
Yeah. So when I think of the big four, I kind of get why the other three are more looked at and more revered, maybe. So Botch's thing is that it was the story with them, right? It was just they hated each other and they only liked Helmet. That was the only thing they had in common. But they were tour machines, right? Didn't they like play everywhere? They're one of those bands.
They played a lot. They played with everyone. They toured constantly. Yeah, there is definitely the big story. They were also I think, the band that had the techniques that people borrowed the most.
Yeah.
As far as like the panic chords and the that kind of syncopation that they did, and the effects that they used, the delay stuff that they would do. I feel like that guitar playing was so influential to so many metalcore bands that followed.
And with Converge, like they became just the megastars. Like they became the superstars of the sound, and just kind of even moved away from mathcore being like one of the tags that they get hung up on. Like people are now just like, yeah, they're a hardcore band.
Yeah, and Converge was never really that mathematical.
Yeah.
They were never really that like heavy on the odd time signatures and the syncopation, and they definitely had like a chaoticness, and they definitely had some like off kilter weird riffs, but those were just like Slayer riffs that were just like played really sloppy. I think Converge was like I would still consider them a mathcore band in the way that these odd parts add up to something that it maybe shouldn't even really work. But the funny thing about the other mathcore bands, like the ones that I like the most and have come back to the most, like Converge, Coalesce, are the ones that are less imitated. I mean, even like Cave-In, if you want to get out like into like
beyond
the typical hardcore metalcore kind of adjacent bands, they're the ones that are not. You're not copying the bot riffs. You're not copying the Dillinger Escape Plan like stuff. And I feel like those were the ones that people started dissected more. And I think there's like something that's so out of control about like a band like Converge and especially Coalesce that's like, how do you even play some of this stuff? I mean, and Converge had the like, Kurt Ballou was always like, all of your Converge guitar tabs are wrong. None of you are playing in the tunings that I'm playing in. Like, but then like Coalesce has such a bizarre sense of rhythm.
I was gonna say Coalesce has the energy that is around their music is also around them as people and performers. Like Coalesce is famous for being the band that breaks up and gets back together a million times. Like between when they formed in 94 and 99 when they took the really long hiatus, like they were just like always breaking up. Something would happen, they'd get mad at each other, they'd be like fuck this and then stop, and then they'd all come back together. It stayed the same four people for a lot longer than it probably should have, for as much as they broke up. But they also always, maybe because they would do weird shit like, yeah, let's do a split with Get Up Kids. Yeah, let's do a split with Boy Sets Fire, like, and they were so tied into the Kansas City scene. Like half this band was in the Get Up Kids and the Casket Lottery. James Dewey's was in Get Up Kids. Nate was in the Casket Lottery. Jess and Sean were the only two that like pretty much Coalesce was their main focus. And they are the two most key elements, I think, to the band. Though I don't know. They're all pretty essential. But also, you have to throw in the fact, not only were they volatile, their shows were pretty wild to the point where like one thing I read pointed out that like, oh yeah, they wouldn't stop playing if a fight broke out. Like a lot of bands, they would just keep going and just be the soundtrack to the fight. Or Sean apparently was very antagonistic to straight edge people because he was like huge into Earth Crisis. He moved to Syracuse, New York from Kansas City so that he could like be involved in the hardcore scene there, and then came back like 6 months later because he hated the scene and the people and like how everybody in straight edge was an asshole. So then like everything that he wrote for years was just about how much he hated like straight edge people and, or the straight edge scene. So there's definitely this like, there are a lot of straight edge people in hardcore. Like even if they're not just at a straight edge show, like a straight edge band, there's straight edge people at those shows during this time. So I can imagine that was also another thing that was like, they're just antagonistic. Like they pick fights. And so, but you think that would add to the story, you know? That would be part of the thing that made people really interested in them. Though maybe the making fun of straight edge was like the thing that really kept them from being so big. I don't know.
Coalesce is really bizarre. They're bizarre. They're just really strange. They're so unruly, and they have such a like abrasive. And they remind me of Dead Guy a great deal. I mean, not just in like the vocal styles, but in like the rhythmic stuff, but also in just like the general unapproachability of them. Where like, you know, like Dead Guy, like Fixation on a Coworker as a record, you just like, this is a frightening person singing these songs. And Coalesce tapped into that very much. You watch footage of them and it's like, that's not human like behavior on stage. That is, and the way that they sound, the almost laughing in the face of any kind of conventional songwriting, like of being like, we're just gonna throw an extra beat in this measure. Why not? Like, it's completely random, and the vocals sound like no one else, which was Sean's whole point. He was like, I want to sound like absolutely no hardcore vocalist you've ever heard.
And he succeeded.
And he did. I mean, there's no one who really comes close. And his phrasing too, like there's a moment on this record in like the first song with the he's just trying to cram so many words into such a short phrase. Like, it's so weird. And it's funny, and it's also really visceral, and they're like they seem really super serious, but then they're also like Get Up Kids members. You know what I mean? Like like they seem really dangerous and really serious, but also like they're laughing at you, like they're gonna do Led Zeppelin covers.
Yeah.
And it's just this like complete dismissive, like fuck you energy that kind of encapsulates the band. I feel like that's a big part of what makes them so unapproachable and why people didn't latch onto the story. You can't imitate them, and they're like, they would probably beat you up, or at least laugh at you getting beaten up for trying to imitate them.
Well, then too, like, even they were famous for just destroying all their equipment too. Like, they would just destroy whatever they were playing with. So it had to be one of those situations where they were playing the cheapest gear they could, just so they could be like, and Jess is going to literally scrape it against the stage and just like smash the shit out of it.
Jess does seem like the most destructive member of the band, and probably why he really isn't known for doing anything other than Coalesce.
Yeah, he's really not. That's it. Just Coalesce. I wonder what he does now. Sean, so I've seen Coalesce twice. Once was at Fest. I think it was Fest 7. And the thing that I remember the most about that set was Sean taping up the mic stand. He taped up like the middle part where you loosen it to like make it go up and, you know, raise it or lower it. He raised it, and then he taped the shit out of it so that it wouldn't slide down. And then at the top, he taped the shit out of where the mic is and the mic, stand, like, and just, he was like making it so that it could stay in place so that when he played, he could crank down on it and just be like, he like was hanging off of the mic stand during that set and like putting his full weight like on that mic stand. So like that was his way of just being like, all right, I don't want this thing falling in the middle of a set.
Yeah.
And it was just intense. And then I saw them again at Crazy Fest, and that was outside. It's still the best live band I've ever seen outside, because Crazy Fest had these doofy security guards who stood in front of the stage the whole weekend, both stages. And Sean just like made fun of them behind his back because they were very visibly not enjoying the music that was happening. They were just very much like, shaking their head and just like, whoa, what the fuck is this? I think he even like poured water on one of the security guards at one point. And he had like a hand brace on too at that one too. So it looked like he'd like fucked his hand up doing something, probably punching something.
Yeah. And
then Jess just being like possessed when he plays, and literally just, that guitar was probably unplayable afterwards. Like the things he did to that guitar. In the meantime, you look in the back and you got your two Nates, Nate and Junior, and they're just like holding it down. And I think that they are the like, we're keeping the time on this because if we go wild, we're gonna lose the song.
Yeah.
Because Jess is gonna just go apey and not gonna know where he is. He's not gonna be able to bring the song back. So let's get to Ox. This is the final record. And I remember, I don't think we knew at the time it was going to be the last record. I don't think it was like pitched even as the final Coalesce album. I think it just became the final Coalesce album.
Yeah. Which I don't know that they've ever even said it officially at any point. Coalesce, I feel like, is a band that could just show up out of nowhere and say, oh yeah, we have a new record. We're going to play some shows.
Yeah, Nate and Junior, they're still in Casket Lottery, so I think they're still in the Casket Lottery. Sean pops up doing guest vocals on things.
Yeah.
Jess doesn't. Jess doesn't do anything. But yeah, they are one of the ones that you should never like. There have been 3 members of Casket Lottery in in Coalesce, because the original bass player Stacy Hilt was also in the Casket Lottery. So Stacy Hilt played bass, left, then Nathan Ellis came in and took his spot on bass. And then they got Nate Jr. Nate Jr.'s currently not in the lineup, but Nathan Ellis is, and Stacy Hilt. But so, okay, Ox felt big. It was like, all right, the legacy of this band has built to this. Like they did the 012 reissue. Hydra Head did like a bunch of reissues of their stuff in a couple years prior to it. It was like, I guess it came from the Norma Jean is aping this sound. And while everybody was saying, oh yeah, Norma Jean, botch clones. They were on the high end of the guitars, but if you actually pay attention to what the low end like kind of rhythm is doing, they're just copying Coalesce. Like the low end rubbery kind of riffs. There's a lot of Coalesce on Oh God for sure. So then I guess all these labels were like, well, let's cash in on this. Let's reissue all the botch and that one Mathcore Cave-In record and all the Coalesce stuff. And so when Ox came out, it was kind of like, this is a big deal. They're on Relapse. They got a budget. The packaging on this thing is really great, which is the Invisible Creatures, the Clark brothers from Demon Hunter, which I feel like this record has like symbols all over the artwork, and then like the next 5 records that they put out that they did artwork for had symbols on them. Like oh Sleeper record, yeah, it's got symbols on it. But this record just was like, okay, it's a big deal. We're getting lots of articles in Relapse and Revolver. We're going to talk about it like coming out. And I think, well, it did well. It was their only album to get on the Billboard charts. It was on the Heat Seekers chart at number 28, which is that's the chart you get on if it's the first time you're on the chart. And to me, I think everybody was like, this is one of their best records ever made.
You know, that was something that I was wondering. If you look at the Rate Your Music rankings for this record, it's not super well received. I feel like when it came out, people were like, this is incredible. This is Coalesce. They're in top form. And, they're really the only big, OG mathcore bands that's putting out records that because what Converge is doing in '09 is really starting to get pretty expansive and trying to go in. Really, I feel like Axe to Fall is where they solidified what they sound like for the last. I mean, ever since that record came out, all of those records feel like they're from the same place, coming from the same place in a way that everything before that record feels like an earlier period. So Converge, you would almost call them a metal band at that point, especially when you look at like the people that collaborated on that record. Coalesce feels very much like a hardcore band, but I wonder if, and I mean, I don't know, it's weird because it's like it's almost the right timing and it's almost the wrong timing. Like they put this record out and it's like, oh yeah, you guys like Norma Jean? Well, here's the original. But then at the same time, it's like, we don't really care about Norma Jean anymore.
By '09? No.
I mean, they were certainly like still a pretty active band, but as far as like that whole category of metalcore bands ripping off Botch, they're either getting into like you're fully in like the trancecore, attack crabcore phase of that, like the scene metalcore sound, or you're like, yeah, I'm over metalcore and I only listen to like Deathwish bands.
The Ox came out between the Anti-Mother and Meridional.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, okay, that's the era where everybody stopped caring about Norma Jean and weren't doing the mathcore thing anymore. In fact, now we were getting to the like copies of Norma Jean phase of thing. So yeah, you're right. Like, it's like the timing was wrong for this, and maybe that's why Converge and Dillinger did so well during this time period, because they were still active and they were putting out stuff. And yeah, they weren't really the same sound anymore, but they kind of reaped the benefits of the like, well, we got a new Hot Topic contingent in our audience that we didn't have before. We'll take their money. It spins. And Coalesce was like, fuck you. We're on hiatus during that period. But that being said, if this album had come out during the peak of that, I don't know that it would have been as accepted.
Well, and here's the other. So, yeah, that's the thing is Coalesce is not going to be the band that 15-year-olds get into. They're old men at this point.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, like, I feel like the other proof in the pudding of mathcore being really phased out by 2009 is that we have the other legacy mathcore record that comes out that year that kind of no one cared about, and it's New Distances by Narrows. So Dave, there's your key Botch members, other than like, I mean, it's not Knudsen, but it's Varellin. So his voice is so distinct too, and it's the sound of that Narrows record is very much a continuation of Botch, even if it's not, exactly the same kind of guitars. It's definitely in that chunky, uneven kind of mathcore sound, and no one really cared. No one cared about Narrows, which was shocking to me. And I remember kind of thinking that at the time. I'm like, this is Dave Varellin. This sounds great, and no one's really reacting to it. And people were like, I think critically and maybe on paper were more receptive of the Coalesce record, probably because it was the actual band and had all of the key members, but they didn't keep going.
Out of curiosity, I was checking to see what was when you search for mathcore in 09, you have Axe to Fall, which they had already moved past. They had already moved past from that mathcore thing, or they're just Converge at that point. You get I Wrestled a Bear Once.
The Number 12 Looks Like You, which that record is really good. Those last couple Number 12 Looks Like You records were really good. You get Psyopus. It's that grindy, super technical Dillinger style mathcore.
Yeah, you get the Chariot, Wars and Rumors of the Wars, Burnt by the Sun. Yeah, there's a Keel Hall record. Yeah, it's just kind of like done. It's a dead sound by 09. But okay, so my thinking of like it doesn't even really matter though, because the people who were praising this album were the Hydra Head people, like the people who were loving what was coming out of that era of stuff, like the Brown Pants metal stuff. Like this feels like their most Brown Pants metal record in their discography. That may be primarily due to the fact that they were incorporating so many elements of, they say, spaghetti westerns and Americana were the thing that they were really influenced on this record.
Yeah, there's that. There are those kind of like experimental interlude type tracks, and the blues, electric blues song that they do on here.
Yeah, I mean that's more extension of their Led Zeppelin influence too. Like they did the Led Zeppelin cover album and then started incorporating like Led Zeppelin style riffs on 012, and then they just brought a lot of that with them on this record too. This record rules. To me, it's probably I don't know. I like all of their records pretty. 012 is my favorite. Functioning might be my second favorite. But Ox just feels really different too. Like yes, it's technically the same people, but they almost feel like a different band. And like they were trying to accomplish a different thing on this record. I say that, but then they do like half the songs of this record are the guitar and Sean starts at the exact same part of, like it. They have Coalesce has this like pummeling, like we're just gonna start the song, and it's like they start every instrument at the same time, and Sean being another instrument that they have now. All right, everybody's switched on. We're all gonna play now. Like they do that on The Villain We Won't Deny, New Voids in One's Resolve, Questions to Root Out Fools, Dead is Dead. It's just this like, yep, here we go. We're gonna smack you with our guitars, literally.
This record is harder to pick out other than the like really different sounding songs, the like non-Coalesce sounding songs and moments on this record. This record is harder to pick out the individual tracks than most of their previous records, but it sounds really, really good. It's probably the best they ever sounded, other than like maybe the remastered Revolution. And just listening, that is definitely one of the things that I feel like kind of holds people back from Coalesce, is that Give Them Rope and Functioning on Impatience don't sound very good. They're not great mixes. They're not great recordings, but the songs are great. And this record, I feel like, sounds great. The songs are really good, but maybe don't stand on their own as well. But they all work really well with each other. It's a record that's really easy to listen to. You don't really have to fight with any of it. It's kind of the perfect length, like 35 minutes long.
Mm-hmm. It's 15 tracks too, and I was very nervous. I was like, oh no, it's gonna be like a 47-minute record. And it's not. It's 35. They did a good job of just being like, no, we know who we are. We can't outstay our welcome.
And they have short songs.
Yeah.
And they're very much the kind of band that they do a thing that I think is something that hardcore bands could do a better job of, or could really learn from Coalesce, is that they are willing to make a song out of one idea.
Yeah.
And they are very progressive in the song structures, in the way of just being like, well, here's a part, song's done. There's not really riffs that come back. Like, oh, we got to go back to that breakdown, or we got to come back to that riff, but play it slower. Like they're like, here's the riff, we're done.
There's no choruses on anything really. I mean, some of them do, but not really. They're also just going to be like, you can't sing along with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Really, they're like one of the only songs on the record that does kind of have this like recurring guitar part would be like In My Wake for My Own, which is that one that's like and
Yeah.
then the falsetto on it. Like
Yeah.
that riff comes back at the back half of the song.
But, as much as it can be easy to maybe lose focus and just kind of like nod your head and feel it more than pay attention to it. They put a song like Dead is Dead at the back of the record, and how climactic that is, that dead is dead breakdown at the end of that song. Like how memorable that is. There's definitely lots of memorable moments all over the record.
Well, that song also has like the spaghetti western march in the middle of it too.
Yeah. And it's 2 minutes long. It feels huge. It feels like this epic song, but it's 2 minutes long.
Yeah, there's like it's what's the longest song on here? Let's see if we can pull that up. My guess is Wild Ox Moan.
Yeah. It's like that and the Purveyor of Novelty and Nonsense. They're both like 3.5 minutes long.
Yeah, Purveyor. Yep. Wild Ox Moan's 3 minutes and 30. Purveyor's 3 minutes 29. In My Wake is 3 minutes 21. Oh, longest song is By What We Refuse. It's 3 minutes 35.
Oh.
That one I feel like also has like I called it Angry Bee guitars on that one. Really, like looking at like my notes that I've taken, a thing that I really refer to a lot is the kind of stomp groove that they have on almost every song. It's just this like the drum is just accentuating that bass forward sound that they have. Because as much as I was saying earlier about like, the bass is kind of guiding the song, it's also like for the sound of this record, the bass is essential. It's this huge, ugly sounding bass. It's like just super distorted, and it's just like it's the kind of bass tone you would hear on like a sludge record, and it's the guy from the Casket Lottery.
Yeah. A band with great bass parts.
Yeah.
Prominent bass parts.
I think one thing that they get talked about the most, and as far as their mathiness, is the drumming and the polyrhythms, I guess is what you'd call them. I read one review that said that this drummer is better than James Dewey's was, and that this guy was almost like a robot. Like you just like program the beat and he'll do it. But really, they're all playing together in a way that's just like, how did you all remember how to keep up with this song? Because even Jess is like, yeah, and then I do my crazy thing here. And it's like, but he's doing the right sounding crazy thing at that point in the song. Like it's what that part of the song sounds like. It's like, how does he remember? It's like, now I do the squeedly weedly bit here.
Yeah. Rhythmically, like, I mean, there's definitely like, 5/8 stuff. And like I said, like the extra beats, they'll just add on, they'll shift into 5/4. And there's definitely a degree to which they're like very consciously making those time keeping decisions. But even within, if they're playing in 4/4, which they do a lot, they all land very consistently at different points on the beat. It's like, it's almost, there's almost a micro rhythmic, like someone is always consistently a little early. Someone's always consistently a little late. They have this way of like having this almost like delayed, scattered feeling about the way that they all land on the beat. And I don't know if that's intentional or if that's just like synergy of the way that they play, but it's like it's beyond syncopation. It's not just that there's a swing. It's like they all are really good timekeepers, but their clocks are all set at slightly different rates, but they're all landing close enough together. You know what I mean? It's really hard to describe. Microrhythmic is the only, theoretical term for what I feel like they're doing. They're subdividing the beat to such small degrees so consistently that it's got to be on purpose. But
okay.
And I mean, Jess has, I think Jess Steiniger has like a music education background. I want to say he has a music degree.
I don't know. Well, could it be that also maybe they're just reacting to each other too? It's more of a, oh, you're stopping there. Oh, okay. Then I'll stop too. Like, or do you think it's too close? It's too close together to you be like, oh no, I blew past that.
I think they're well practiced, but they're not. Maybe they're not recording. They didn't record this stuff with a click. I don't know.
I bet that's why they use the same guy since 1995, because he didn't make them use a click. But I feel like you'd almost have to, though.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was misremembering. James Dewey's does have a major in music theory, which he's not on this record, but
No.
he was in Coalesce.
I guess like the thing about Coalesce too is it's all these different pieces that fit together so well, but it's weird that they're all together in the same band. Does that make sense? It seems like every part of this band should be like, the drummer should be in a band that's known for their really good drummer. The bass player should be in a band that's known for their really good bass player. Like Sean should be fronting a hardcore band that like the music isn't the most innovative, but like vocally he's the coolest thing.
Yeah.
Same with Jess. Like it's all these people that would, if they were in another band, would be like the holy shit member of that band, and then they're all together.
They're all together in the same band. It's very similar to the Converge band structure of being like every member has their thing. Like they are one of the best at their instruments.
Yeah. And
they're all together in this band, and there's a very clear sense of collaboration. When you listen to the music, it sounds like someone plays a part and someone responds to it. And it doesn't feel like, I feel like when you look at like a band like Botch, you can say like, yeah, that's all Knudsen.
Yeah.
You can just tell when there's a band that is writing, where there's like that single writer, it's usually like the guitarist, especially in hardcore, where it's like, oh yeah, that's the guiding force of that band, the driving force of that band. And like, they're really writing the songs and kind of dictating like, oh, I need you to play this to this kind of riff. And like, not to say that there's no collaboration happening, but yeah, Coalesce you're not going to pick one member of Coalesce that's your favorite part of Coalesce. I mean, unless you're just like, that's the instrument you play, you're probably going to gravitate towards, like when I was a hardcore vocalist, like Sean's voice was definitely like a big influence to me specifically, because that was what I could draw from it whenever I listened to Coalesce. But when I listen to Coalesce now, I'm not trying to be Sean Ingram anymore at all. I'm not trying to be anybody in this band.
Yeah.
And they all are like, they're all doing something, and you could listen to this record 4 times and you could just say, I'm going to pay attention to what the guitar is doing on every song.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's the thing that makes them so volatile as a band, though. Maybe because there's so many of these like pieces that you're just like, there's no like one guiding force in the band, and maybe that's why it's like, it kind of reminds me how the band Zao is kind of in the same vein. There's not one guiding person in Zao during their most tumultuous period. As much as Jesse Smith wanted to be the one guiding the band,
yeah,
he was.
As much as that was the key conflict in the band.
Yeah. But you're like, well, you've got a Russ and a Scott in that band who are doing insane things guitar wise, and then Dan is just this like unique vocalist that like influenced so many other people. So it's like, and when you listen to a Zao record, you're like, I can focus on one thing. The bass is probably like the biggest non-factor in Zao, really, so much to the point they recorded a record without a bass player.
Yeah,
2, I think. But then like a lot of other bands, it's just like, yeah, the guitarist is the main guy. He writes all the songs and we just play along. Because it's always the ones who are always like, I want my ideas. And they go wind up and do a Reggie in the Full Effect. Which is so weird that he was in that band. He was the drummer in Coalesce. The Reggie guy. He's so goofy.
Which is really so much of where I come back to like, Coalesce is laughing at you. The Reggie in the Full Effect guy is the drummer in one of the ugliest sounding hardcore bands.
To me, I wish they'd done another record. So, okay, they released the Ox EP in 2009 too. That's the official final release by Coalesce. Though apparently they wrote that before the album, which I listened to that too. And it's got a little bit of that spaghetti western stuff, but I think that maybe they were like, well, if we put this out first, people are going to be like, what the fuck is this? And so maybe that's why they put it out after, because then they're like, okay, now we've eased them into like the Americana and spaghetti western elements that because it's no mistake that the record starts with just like a shotgun blast of Coalesce type song, and it isn't. You get a little hints of it on the second track. Like I think that's the one you get like the clean sung kind of bluesy vocals on that one with like the keys, like the smashed, you laid your elbow on the keyboard sound on that one. But then Wild Ox Moan is the third track, and it's like a straight up blues intro. And it's probably one of my all-time favorite Coalesce songs. And the Ox EP like starts with an acoustic interlude and ends with an acoustic interlude, and like the spaghetti western is all over it. And yeah, it also sounds different. It sounds brighter. Now, I don't know. They said they wrote it before the album, so I don't know if they recorded it before the album or not. But it's to this point where I'm like, I wish they would have kept going, because I would have liked to have seen them experiment more with this stuff. Like Jess and Nate apparently were saying they were listening to like Gillian Welch and Nickel Creek and the Stanley Brothers, and he's like, and the Old Brother Where Art Thou soundtrack, and like they were going like full like bluegrass and folk. And I just would have loved to have seen like what they would have done next if they really started incorporating that stuff. Probably get like a hardcore version of like an Earth record almost.
Yeah.
But yeah, these are some of my favorite just like individual tracks. And the ones that I like the most are the ones where they do something very different than the rest of the record. Like on like Questions to Root Out Old Fools, where like the guitar channel just switches up from like the left and the right. But like the left guitar effect is completely different from the right guitar effect. Like the right one's way lower, like a darker, muddier sound, but the left one is like a more harsh, high noise, and it just switches back and forth. There's all these like radio interference type sounds all over the record too. Like they turned on a CB radio next to the guitar, and the guitar picked it up. Yeah. So I don't know. It's one of my favorite records they ever did. It's one of the most unique things they ever did. I remember when I was a burgeoning show booker, and I booked the band Colony to play in a coffee shop, and I was wearing my Coalesce shirt at the show, and I want to say it was maybe like the drummer came up to me. He's like, "Hey, I like your shirt. What's your favorite Coalesce record?" And I was like, I think O12 is probably my favorite. He goes, "Oh, really? Ox is my favorite." And I was like, "Oh, hell yeah." And it was like recent. It was only like 2 or 3 years old whenever he said that. It's like, "Oh yeah, that record ruled. I loved it. I was glad they put it out when they came back." And so maybe that's why I've just always remembered that guy in Colony said it was his favorite record. So it must be a lot of people's favorite. But I don't know very many Coalesce fans.
No. They're few and far between, and it's surprising.
But the ones who are big time fans. Like they're very passionate about Coalesce. Did you know Coalesce was almost on Solid State?
Yeah, I would.
The reason why because Jess and Nate used to be Hare Krishnas, and they stopped being Hare Krishna, and the way the thing was written was they quit being Hare Krishna, and that meant they could sign to Solid State. I was like, what? Well, they're not Christians either. So like, well, Sean is. Sean's calls himself a Christian, I think.
He did at one point. I would be curious to know where he is now in the post-Trump world of, where a lot of people left evangelicalism.
What was there another Coalesce connection? What was American Spectator? Who was going to be in that?
American Spectator was supposed to be Sean, basically an early version of Demon Hunter with Sean. Yeah.
I knew Demon Hunter was the connection because they were like, the Clark brothers were big Coalesce fans.
And like Jesse was Sprinkle in there, or was it Jesse Smith almost?
I want to say Jesse Smith. So like the Clarks and Jesse Smith and Sean. That's like
two members of Training for Utopia.
Mm-hmm.
The drummer from Zao, which the band would not have lasted long, and because of who Jesse Smith was at that time, and probably, well, I don't know what he's like now, but I know that he hasn't had any really consistent bands for a long time. So, but an incredible drummer.
Yeah.
And Sean's vocals,
which I don't think Sean would have taken Jesse very well either. He would have probably wound up quitting too. Unless it was one of those projects where it's like, we're a distance band. That's like the only way that would have worked. The Clarks are probably why they were almost on Solid State too. They were probably like, no, they're trying to be like not a Christian record label anymore. Oh, what's that? Agony Scene got pissed.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Yeah, that would have been weird. That would have been a weird fit for them. I feel like that almost being on Solid State thing is just like they talked to them one time. And Brendan was, yeah. And they were like,
yeah,
I
I'll
don't
put
know.
your record out. I don't care.
Is it going to help me get a yacht? But yeah. Coalesce would go on hiatus in 2010, and then they would do like some one-offs in 2011 and 2012. 2011, they played Crazy Fest. That's the one I saw them at. And that's been it. I know Sean's got like a family. I listened to, he did an As the Story Grows podcast episode. I think that's the show where he talked about like, oh yeah, we're like fostering these kids, you know, like they were my neighbors and now we're fostering them. And so he's a pretty busy guy, I imagine. He started, Blue Collar Merch. Was that them? Yeah, I think that was his merch company, which I think got bought out. Is that Merch Bar now?
I don't know. It's hard to look up because if you just look up Blue Collar Merch, you get like Republican clothing companies.
Yeah. Let's see. Sean Ingram, Blue Collar Merch. He was his LinkedIn. There we go. Operation Manager, Project Manager at Blue Collar Industries Incorporated and KU Professional Leadership Training. What is he doing? When's the last time he updated this thing? 8K for meeting their goal. Oh, we gotta log into Merch Table to see, yeah, he does Merch Table now. So Merch Table, I think, is formerly Blue Collar. I don't know if he still works for Merch Table. It's very weird to see a musician that you really like on LinkedIn. And Jess, who knows what Jess is doing? No.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go start digging through public records of. He's not coming up anywhere. I imagine he just has a normal job. I don't.
Yeah. Well, any final words on Ox?
No, I think that covers it.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and we appreciate you. Give us a rating or review on iTunes, Spotify, all that good stuff, and we'll see you next week.